Listen, I need you to understand something before we begin this tale of utter insanity. I, Velkor Thren, Senior Intelligence Analyst for the Kaldreth Sovereignty, have witnessed 3 system-wide wars, 2 planetary extinctions, and 1 diplomatic incident involving the Haraxian ambassador that we still don't talk about. But nothing, and I mean absolutely nothing, prepared me for the humans and their so-called diplomats. You think you know terror. You think you understand the meaning of fear. Try sitting across a negotiation table from Ambassador Marcus Webb and his team. Try it. I dare you, but I'm getting ahead of myself, aren't I? Let me take you back 6 months ago, when the Galactic Council made what historians will likely call the single biggest miscalculation in recorded history. We invited humanity to join the civilized species of the galaxy. We actually sent them a formal invitation, with calligraphy and everything. The council chambers on Station Nexus 9 were packed that day. Every major species had sent representatives. The Kaldreth, naturally, because we run half the bureaucracy in this part of space. The Thoraxians brought their military advisors because they bring military advisors to birthday parties. The Quillian Collective sent their trade ministers because those feathered accountants can't resist a new market. And the Vreks, well, the Vreks showed up because they show up to everything, mostly to complain. I was there as an observer, taking notes, doing my job. Standard diplomatic reception for a new species. We'd done this 47 times in the last century. 47 times. We had it down to a science. Welcome speech, capability assessment, treaty negotiations, membership approval. Simple, clean, boring. Honestly, then the humans arrived. The airlock doors opened, and out stepped Ambassador Marcus Webb, flanked by his attachés. Now Webb looked harmless enough, middle-aged by their standards, graying hair, warm smile, expensive suit. He carried a briefcase that probably cost more than my annual salary. Professional, polished, completely and utterly terrifying, though we didn't know it yet. Behind him came his team, Deputy Ambassador Lisa Ortega, who smiled like she knew something you didn't. Cultural Liaison Officer James Park, who seemed to be taking notes on everything and everyone. And Economic Advisor Rachel Moss, who kept glancing at her tablet with an expression that can only be described as predatory satisfaction. Council Speaker Thormin, that pompous Thoraxian windbag, puffed out his chest plates and began the traditional greeting. Representatives of humanity, welcome to the Galactic Council. We extend our appendages in friendship and look forward to profitable relations between our peoples. Webb smiled. Stars help us, he smiled. Speaker Thorman, honored councillors, we're absolutely delighted to be here, truly delighted. Earth sends its warmest regards and highest hopes for our mutual future. Everything seemed fine. Everything seemed normal. We proceeded with the standard protocols, treaty presentations, capability exchanges, the usual bureaucratic dance. The humans listened attentively, asked intelligent questions, and seemed genuinely interested in peaceful cooperation. 3 hours in, I started to relax. Maybe humans were just another species after all. Maybe the reports about their Death World origins were exaggerated. Maybe this would be straightforward. That's when Trade Minister Corlix made his fatal mistake. The Quillian Collective, you see, had been running a profitable little scheme for decades. Whenever a new species joined the council, they'd offer to facilitate their entry into galactic markets for a modest fee, 20% of all trade revenue for the first 50 years. It was exploitation, pure and simple, but it was legal exploitation. The contracts were airtight. 47 species had signed. Collex preened his feathers and slid the standard contract across the table to Webb. Ambassador, to help your species navigate the complexities of galactic commerce, the Quillian Collective is pleased to offer our comprehensive trade facilitation package. Simply sign here, here, and here. Webb picked up the contract. He read it. He smiled again. That smile. That terrible, terrible smile. Minister Corlix, this is quite the offer. Quite the offer indeed. He turned to Rachel Moss. Rachel, what do you think? Moss didn't even look up from her tablet. Economic colonialism disguised as assistance, standard monopolistic practices, antitrust violations in 17 jurisdictions if we were operating under Earth law. Creative though, I'll give them that. The chamber went silent. You could have heard a pin drop. Actually, someone did drop a pin. It was very awkward. Corlix's feathers ruffled. I beg your pardon. Webb set down the contract gently. Minister, we appreciate the offer, we really do. But we'll have to decline. You see, we've done our homework. All 47 species currently in the Council signed similar agreements with you, and over the past 50 years the Quillian Collective has extracted approximately 14 trillion credits from these arrangements, while providing services that, well, let's call them minimal. This is outrageous, Collex squawked. Those contracts are perfectly legal. Oh, absolutely, Webb agreed. Perfectly legal, also perfectly unethical, exploitative, and exactly the kind of practice that Earth's diplomatic corps exists to politely dismantle. He leaned forward. Tell me, Minister, have you calculated what would happen if even one species successfully renegotiated their contract? How it might set a precedent? How it might encourage others to examine their agreements more closely? Collex went very still. Several other councillors shifted uncomfortably. Webb continued, his voice warm and friendly, and absolutely merciless. We're not going to sign your contract, Minister. Furthermore, we're going to make our analysis of said contract publicly available to all council members, free of charge, just being helpful neighbors. I watched Collex's face cycle through several colors. The Quillian Collective's entire business model was based on information asymmetry. Nobody had ever actually analyzed their contracts before. Nobody had cared enough. And now the humans were about to blow that wide open. But Webb wasn't done. Oh no, he turned to Speaker Thorman. Speaker, while we're on the subject of reviewing existing agreements, our legal team noticed something interesting about the Council's security arrangements. Thorman's chest plates flattened nervously. What about our security arrangements? Well, said James Park, consulting his notes, the current contract gives the Thoraxian Defense Fleet exclusive rights to provide security for all Council stations and facilities, at a cost of approximately 2 trillion credits annually, for the past 90 years. That contract was competitively bid, Thorman protested. Was it, though? Park asked mildly. Because we found records of only one formal bidder, the Thoraxian Defense Fleet, who bid the day after the bidding period opened, and were awarded the contract the day before the bidding period closed. Interesting timeline. Lisa Ortega spoke up for the first time. We're not accusing anyone of anything, of course. We're simply suggesting that perhaps it's time for a review. Fresh eyes, fresh perspectives. We'd be happy to submit a competitive bid ourselves, just to ensure the Council is getting the best value for its money. The Thoraxian delegation looked like they'd been physically struck. 90 years of guaranteed revenue, possibly about to evaporate. I saw Thorman's military advisor lean over and whisper something urgent. Thorman's face went from angry red to pale grey. And still Webb wasn't finished. He turned to the Vrex delegation. Ambassador Kretsch, I've been meaning to ask about the Vrex Mining Consortium's operations in the Outer Territories. Kretsch's eyes stalks retracted slightly. What about our operations? Just curious about the resource extraction agreements with the local populations. Our anthropologist noticed that the profit-sharing arrangements seem a bit one-sided. 95% to the consortium, 5% to the indigenous miners who actually do the work. That seems disproportionate. Those populations are pre-industrial. They don't understand the value of what they're mining. Webb's smile never wavered. Don't they? Or have they simply never had anyone explain it to them? We'd be happy to provide educational resources, help them understand market values, negotiate better terms, just being good galactic citizens. I need you to understand what was happening here. In less than 30 minutes, the human diplomatic team had identified and threatened the primary revenue streams of 3 major council powers. 3. And they'd done it with smiles and politeness and offers of helpful assistance. This wasn't diplomacy. This was warfare. Economic warfare waged with spreadsheets and legal precedents and that terrifying human habit of actually reading the fine print. The council chamber had descended into barely controlled chaos. Delegations were whispering urgently to each other. Tablets were being consulted. I saw at least 4 ambassadors place emergency calls to their home governments. Webb just sat there, serene and patient, like a man who held all the cards and knew it. Council Speaker Thorman attempted to regain control. Ambassador Webb, these are very serious allegations. The Council operates according to established procedures and agreements. You can't simply waltz in here and upend centuries of tradition. We're not upending anything, Speaker, Webb replied smoothly. We're simply asking questions, promoting transparency, encouraging best practices. Isn't that what the Council is all about? Cooperation and mutual benefit? He paused, mutual being the key word. That's when I realized what the humans were doing. They weren't attacking, they were demonstrating, showing exactly what they were capable of, proving that they'd done their research, understood the system, and knew exactly where all the bodies were buried. It was a message, a very clear message. Mess with us and we'll bring your entire exploitative house of cards crashing down around you. The rest of the session was a blur. Various counselors attempted to change the subject, move on to other topics, anything to escape the systematic dismantling of their comfortable arrangements. But Webb kept circling back, always polite, always friendly, always absolutely devastating. By the time we adjourned, 3 major trade deals were under review, 2 security contracts were being audited, and the Quillian Collective's stock price had dropped 15%. 15% in 4 hours. I cornered Webb after the session because I had to know. Ambassador, was that really necessary? You could have negotiated quietly, behind closed doors. Why make such a public statement? Webb looked at me with those calculating human eyes. Analyst Thren, isn't it? I've read your reports, very thorough. He straightened his tie. To answer your question, we believe in setting expectations early. The galaxy needs to understand that humanity doesn't play the same games everyone else has been playing. We prefer a different approach. And what approach is that? His smile was genuine this time, almost warm, almost. Honesty, transparency, and the complete and utter destruction of anyone who mistakes our civility for weakness. He walked away, leaving me standing there, re-evaluating everything I thought I knew about diplomatic relations. That was 6 months ago. 6 months of watching the humans systematically reshape galactic politics through nothing more than aggressive competence and weaponized bureaucracy. The Quillian Collective lost their monopoly within 2 months. 17 species renegotiated their contracts. Qualex resigned in disgrace. The Thoraxian Defense Fleet had to actually compete for their security contracts. They still won most of them, but at 40% lower cost. Thormin filed a formal protest that was quietly ignored. The Vrex Mining Consortium now pays indigenous workers 30% of profits. Kretsch calls it economic terrorism. The miners call it fair. And the humans? The humans smiled and offered helpful suggestions, and quietly became the most feared diplomatic force in the galaxy. But here's the thing that nobody talks about. Here's the part that keeps me up at night. All of this, everything I've described, was just the opening move. Just humanity introducing themselves, establishing their baseline. Because 3 weeks ago, something happened. Something that made the trade disputes and contract reviews look like children playing in a sandbox. The Zelvac Empire made a move on the Terran colonies in the Deneb sector. Nothing major, just some aggressive posturing, some blockades, the usual territorial nonsense that happens in the outer territories. Species flex, negotiate, compromise, everyone moves on. Except the Zelvacs didn't know who they were dealing with. They thought humans were just another species of bureaucrats and lawyers. They thought wrong. The Galactic Council received a formal communication from Earth yesterday. Very polite, very professional, very brief. The Zelvac Empire has 72 hours to withdraw all forces from Terran space and issue a formal apology. Failure to comply will result in diplomatic consequences of an unprecedented nature. We trust this matter can be resolved peacefully. Regards, Ambassador Marcus Webb. The Zelvac ambassador laughed. Actually laughed. Diplomatic consequences? What are they going to do, audit us to death? I didn't laugh. I've seen what human diplomats can do when they're playing nice. I don't want to see what they do when they're not. The 72-hour deadline expires in 6 hours. And Ambassador Webb just arrived at the council chambers with his entire team, carrying what looks like several dozen briefcases full of documents. He's smiling. That smile. That terrible, wonderful, absolutely terrifying smile. Stars help us all. The Zelvac delegation is already here, confident and smug. They have no idea what's coming, no idea at all. I've positioned myself in the observation gallery with a full recording setup. Whatever happens next, it needs to be documented, for the historical record, for future generations, for the warning to anyone who thinks humanity's diplomatic core is something to be trifled with. Webb is setting up at the main table now. Moss is organizing documents. Park is preparing a presentation. Ortega is talking to someone from the Galactic Media Network. She's arranged for live coverage of a diplomatic session. This isn't going to be a negotiation. This is going to be an execution, a public execution, broadcast across the entire galaxy. The Zelvac ambassador just noticed the cameras. His confidence is starting to crack. Just a little. Just enough to be noticeable. Webb stands up, adjusts his tie, taps the microphone. Good morning, councillors. Thank you all for attending on such short notice. We have quite the presentation prepared for you today. Quite the presentation indeed. The main screen lights up behind him. I can see the title slide. The Zelvac Empire, a comprehensive analysis of treaty violations, war crimes, and why they're about to have a very bad day. Oh no. Oh yes. Oh, this is going to be spectacular. The Zelvac ambassador is on his feet. This is outrageous. We demand. Webb doesn't even look at him. Ambassador Kelvin, please sit down. You'll want to be seated for this. Trust me. The way he says it. The absolute certainty. The complete lack of concern. Kelvin sits down, slowly, like a man approaching his own funeral. Webb advances to the next slide. Let's begin with a simple question. How many species remember the Thalax incident of 2020-47? Show of hands? A few hands go up, not many. The Thalax were a minor species that went extinct decades ago. Ancient history. The Thalax homeworld, Webb continues conversationally, suffered a catastrophic ecological collapse in 2020-47. Records indicate it was due to natural causes. Industrial contamination, their own fault really. Very sad. The species was declared extinct within 5 years. He clicks to the next slide. Except it wasn't natural causes, it was deliberate. Specifically, it was the result of illegal mining operations that dumped toxic waste directly into the planetary water system. Mining operations conducted by, anyone want to guess? The Zelvac delegation has gone very quiet, very pale. Their skin has shifted from confident purple to terrified grey. That's right, Webb confirms. Zelvac Mining Enterprises, a subsidiary of the Zelvac Imperial Corporation, which is, for those keeping track, directly controlled by the Zelvac Emperor himself. Next slide. The Thalax knew what was happening. They filed 17 formal complaints with the Galactic Council, 17, all mysteriously lost in bureaucratic processing. How does that happen, I wonder? He doesn't wait for an answer. We found the complaints, all of them, in the Zelvac Embassy's classified archives, which they'd sealed for 100 years. Unfortunately for them, human hackers are very good at their jobs, and our classified programs have absolutely no problem with industrial espionage when genocide is involved. The chamber erupts. Half the delegates are on their feet. The other half are frantically taking notes. The Galactic Media Network cameras are capturing everything. Ambassador Kelvin is trying to speak, but Webb just keeps going. Slide after slide, crime after crime, each one documented, verified, cross-referenced. The Thalax incident was just the opening act. And I'm sitting here in the observation gallery, watching the single most devastating diplomatic presentation in galactic history, thinking one thought over and over. This is why the galaxy fears human diplomats. Not because they're aggressive, not because they're violent, but because they do their homework. They find the truth, and then they weaponize it with the precision of a surgical strike and the impact of a planetary bombardment. The presentation is only 20 minutes in. Webb has at least 6 more briefcases of evidence. This is going to take hours, days maybe. And somewhere in a small office on Earth, someone is probably preparing the next presentation for the next species that makes the mistake of thinking humanity can be pushed around. Stars help us all. The humans have arrived, and they brought receipts. The presentation had been running for 3 hours. 3 hours of systematic character assassination, policy dismantling, and what I can only describe as diplomatic carnage on a scale never before witnessed in galactic history. Ambassador Kelvin had stopped objecting after the first hour. He just sat there watching his empire's reputation die in real time, broadcast live across 47 star systems. His skin had gone from terrified grey to something approaching translucent. I didn't know Zelvac physiology could do that. Webb was still going, still smiling, still absolutely merciless. Slide 47, he announced cheerfully, as if he were presenting a quarterly sales report instead of ending an interstellar power's credibility. The Krustin labor dispute of 2020-51. The Zelvac Empire claimed the Krustin workers on mining station Omega-12 initiated an illegal strike. They responded with what they called reasonable force that resulted in 217 casualties. Next slide. Security footage. Actual security footage of Zelvac enforcers firing on unarmed workers. The chamber gasped collectively. Several delegates looked away. I made myself watch. This needed to be witnessed. The Zelvac government reported this as an industrial accident, Webb continued, his voice never losing that friendly tone. That terrible friendly tone, an explosion in the reactor core, very tragic, very unavoidable, except we have the station's maintenance logs showing the reactor was functioning perfectly. We have testimony from 3 survivors who made it off station, and we have this security footage which was supposed to have been erased but was actually backed up to a remote server that the Zelvac IT department forgot existed. He paused, looking directly at Kelvin. Human IT specialists are very thorough. We find all the backups, all of them. Rachel Moss stood up, taking over the presentation. Let's talk economics now, shall we? Because this is where things get really interesting. Oh no. When Moss says things get interesting, it means someone's financial empire is about to collapse. I've seen her work before. She doesn't just find irregularities. She finds patterns, systemic patterns that unravel entire economic structures. The Zelvac Empire has been operating under special trade status with the Council for 30 years. Moss began, pulling up financial charts. This status gives them preferential tariff rates, priority shipping lanes, and exclusive rights to certain resource markets. The justification for this status was that the Zelvac economy needed support after the Great Recession of 2023. More charts appeared, complex financial data that made my head hurt just looking at it, but Moss navigated through it like she was reading a children's book. Except the Zelvac economy recovered fully by 2028, they've been operating at a surplus for 25 years. 25 years of preferential treatment they no longer qualify for. 25 years of an estimated 800 billion credits in unfair competitive advantage. She smiled. It was worse than Webb's smile. Somehow worse. We've calculated the exact amount of restitution owed to affected trade partners. It comes to roughly 742 billion credits, plus interest. We're using the Council's standard compound interest rate of 4% annually. That brings the total to approximately 1.2 trillion credits. The Zelvac financial advisor stood up so fast his chair fell over. You can't be serious. That would bankrupt us. Should have thought of that before committing systematic trade fraud, Moss replied pleasantly. We've already filed the paperwork with the Council's Trade Compliance Division. They have 60 days to audit the claims and render judgment. Our documentation is very thorough. I watched Kelvin's face. He'd moved beyond fear into something like resigned horror. He knew what was coming. We all knew what was coming. This was just the setup. The real blow was still coming. James Park took over next. Cultural analysis, he announced. My specialty. Let's discuss the Zelvac Empire's treatment of minority populations within their own borders. This was new. This wasn't about external crimes or trade violations. This was internal. This was personal. Park pulled up demographic data. The Zelvac Empire consists of 6 distinct ethnic groups. The dominant Zelvac population represents approximately 60%. The other 5 groups make up the remaining 40%. Now let's look at government representation. Chart after chart appeared. Employment statistics, educational access, healthcare outcomes, political representation. Every single metric showed the same pattern. Systematic discrimination, structural inequality, deliberate suppression of minority populations. The Zelvac government claims to be an inclusive empire, Park said quietly. Their constitution guarantees equal rights to all citizens. Beautiful document, really. Shame it's completely ignored in practice. He clicked to testimonial videos. Real people, faces hidden, voices disguised, speaking about their experiences, denied jobs, refused education, harassed by authorities, and worse, much worse. The chamber was completely silent now. This wasn't just about politics or economics anymore. This was about fundamental rights, about dignity, about the kind of injustice that made even hardened diplomats uncomfortable. Park let the testimonials run. 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 15, just letting the voices speak, letting the truth land. When the last video ended, he spoke again. We have 3,000 more testimonials. We've verified each one, cross-referenced details, confirmed identities. This isn't propaganda. This is reality. This is what the Zelvac Empire actually is behind the diplomatic facade. Ambassador Kelvin finally found his voice. This is internal policy. The Council has no jurisdiction over how we govern our own territory. Lisa Ortega stood up. Her turn. Oh stars. Her turn. Actually, Ambassador, you're wrong about that. She pulled up a document I recognized. The Galactic Rights Accord of 289. Article 7, Section 3. All Council member states agree to uphold basic sentient rights within their territories. These rights include freedom from systematic discrimination based on ethnic origin. She zoomed in on specific passages, highlighting key phrases. You signed this accord, Ambassador. Your empire ratified it. You're bound by it. And you're in violation of it. Systematic violation. For decades. Kelvin was shaking now. Actually physically shaking. What do you want? What is this about? We'll withdraw from the Deneb sector. We'll issue your apology. Just stop this. Webb stood up again. The room quieted instantly. Everyone knew this was the moment, the culmination, the point of this entire devastating presentation. Ambassador Kelvin, Webb said, and his voice was different now, harder, colder. The friendly facade had dropped. This isn't about the Deneb sector. This was never about the Deneb sector. This is about sending a message, a very clear message to every species in this galaxy. He walked around the table, approaching the Zelvac delegation directly. You thought you could bully humanity because we're new. You thought we were naive, unprepared, easy targets. You thought wrong. Webb gestured to the screens behind him, still displaying the evidence of decades of crimes. We spent 6 months investigating every council member species, every single one. We know where the bodies are buried. We know which treaties are being violated. We know which trade deals are corrupt. We know which governments are lying to their own people. The chamber erupted in panic. Delegates were shouting. Tablets were being frantically checked. I saw at least a dozen ambassadors place emergency calls. Webb just kept talking, his voice cutting through the chaos. The Zelvac Empire was our demonstration, our opening statement, our proof that we've done our homework and we're not afraid to use it. He turned to address the entire council. Here's how things are going to work from now on. Humanity will operate in good faith. We will honor our agreements. We will be fair and honest partners. And in return we expect the same from all of you. His expression hardened. But if anyone, and I mean anyone, decides to test us, if anyone thinks they can cheat us, threaten us, or treat us like lesser partners, we will do to them exactly what we just did to the Zelvac Empire. We will find every secret, expose every crime, dismantle every corrupt system, and we will do it publicly, thoroughly, and without mercy. The silence was absolute. You could hear the air circulation systems. You could hear people breathing. The choice is yours, Webb concluded. Treat us fairly, and we'll be the best allies you've ever had. Treat us like fools, and we'll be the worst enemy you can imagine. He packed up his briefcase, calm, professional, like he hadn't just fundamentally altered the balance of galactic power. The documentation packages will be distributed to all council members by end of day. Will be available for questions during regular office hours. Good afternoon, everyone. The human delegation walked out, just walked out, leaving behind a chamber full of terrified diplomats and one completely destroyed empire. Ambassador Kelvin sat at his table, staring at nothing. His career was over. His empire's reputation was destroyed. The financial penalties alone would cripple them for generations. The political fallout would be even worse, and he'd gotten off easy. Webb had focused on the Zelvac Empire, but everyone in that room knew the humans had files on all of us. All of us. The Galactic Media Network was still broadcasting. The footage was already spreading across the holonet. By tomorrow, every species in known space would have seen it, would know what humanity was capable of, would understand the new reality. I sat in the observation gallery for another hour, watching the aftermath, watching delegates scramble, watching emergency sessions being called, watching the galactic order shift on its axis. Then I went to do my job. I wrote my report. Detailed, accurate, unflinching. Subject: human diplomatic capabilities. Revised assessment. Previous assessment: potentially problematic. Recommend cautious engagement. Current assessment: extremely dangerous. Recommend complete honesty and fair dealing at all times. I elaborated for 17 pages, documented everything I'd witnessed, made my conclusions clear. Humanity doesn't need weapons to be the most dangerous species in the galaxy. They have something far more powerful. They have the ability to find truth, weaponize information, and deploy it with devastating precision. They fight with facts and evidence, and the patient systematic dismantling of lies. And they're really, really good at it. 3 days later, the Zelvac Empire formally withdrew from the Deneb sector. They issued a public apology. They agreed to the financial penalties. They announced sweeping internal reforms to address discrimination. They had no choice. The council voted to strip their special trade status. Unanimous decision. No one wanted to be seen defending them. not after what Webb had revealed. Within a week, 3 other species voluntarily renegotiated unfair trade agreements. The Quillian Collective announced new transparency initiatives. The Thoraxian Defense Fleet reduced their contract bids by another 15%. The Vrex Mining Consortium increased worker profit sharing to 45%. No one said why. No one had to. Everyone understood. The humans had shown us the sword hanging over all our heads. Reform now, or be reformed later, publicly, painfully, permanently. I saw Ambassador Webb one more time, 2 weeks after the presentation. I was leaving council chambers late, finishing up reports. He was there reading through documents, preparing for the next day's session. "Ambassador," I said, because I had to know, "did you really investigate every council species?" He looked up, smiled that smile. "Every single one. Analyst Thren, took us 4 months, cost us a considerable amount of resources, worth every credit, and you'd really expose them all if they step out of line." Without hesitation, no smile now, just cold certainty. "We're not here to make friends, analyst. We're here to ensure humanity gets treated fairly. If that requires burning down every corrupt system in the galaxy, we'll bring the matches." He went back to his documents. I left him there, working late into the station's night cycle, probably preparing the next devastating presentation. That was 2 months ago. Since then, galactic politics has been remarkably peaceful. Trade disputes get resolved quickly and fairly. Border conflicts get negotiated before they escalate. Treaty violations get reported and addressed immediately. Is it because everyone suddenly developed a conscience? No. It's because everyone knows the humans are watching, taking notes, building files, waiting for someone to give them an excuse to strike. The galaxy feared humanity's military, feared their death world origins and combat capabilities. That fear was misplaced. The real threat was never their soldiers, it was their diplomats, their lawyers, their analysts, their investigators, the ones who smile politely while systematically destroying you with nothing more than facts and evidence and an absolute refusal to let injustice slide. I've updated my intelligence assessments. My recommendations to the Kaldreth sovereignty are simple. Deal honestly with humanity. Honor all agreements. Don't cheat. Don't lie. Don't assume they won't find out, because they will find out. They always find out. And when they do, they won't start a war. They won't send armies. They'll send Ambassador Marcus Webb and his team with their briefcases full of evidence and their terrible friendly smiles. That's the choice the galaxy faces now. The choice Webb laid out so clearly. Be fair partners, or be the next demonstration. Most species are choosing partnership. Surprisingly, galactic governance is actually improving. Trade is more equitable. Conflicts are resolved faster. Minority rights are being addressed. Not because everyone suddenly became enlightened, but because everyone's terrified of becoming the next Zelvac Empire. Fear can be an excellent motivator for positive change. Who knew? The Zelvac Empire, for what it's worth, is actually reforming. Real reforms, not cosmetic ones. Their new government is addressing the discrimination issues, implementing oversight, prosecuting officials who committed crimes. They don't have a choice. The humans are watching. Always watching. Always watching. Ambassador Kelvin resigned in disgrace. Last I heard, he's living in exile on a mining colony somewhere, probably thinking about all the ways he underestimated humanity. I don't feel sorry for him. Play stupid games, win stupid prizes. That's a human saying I've learned. It applies well here. As for me, I keep doing my job, analyzing, reporting, watching. The humans have been model council members since that presentation. Helpful, cooperative, fair. They've contributed valuable insights to trade negotiations, offered technical assistance to developing species, mediated disputes with remarkable effectiveness. But I've seen their files. I know what they're capable of. I know that beneath the helpful facade is an intelligence apparatus that would make the old Kaldreth spy networks look like amateur hour. So I write my reports. I recommend cooperation. I advise honesty. I remind my government that humanity isn't our enemy unless we make them our enemy. And every night I sleep a little better knowing that the Kaldreth sovereignty has never cheated humanity, never violated our agreements, never given them a reason to open one of those briefcases. The galaxy has a new dominant power, not because they have the biggest fleet or the strongest economy or the most territory, but because they have something no one else seems to possess in such abundance. They have integrity, and they have the willingness to enforce it on everyone else, whether we like it or not. The Galactic Empire feared humanity's diplomats, past tense. Now we just fear them, present tense, ongoing, permanent. And they have every reason to keep us afraid, because fear keeps us honest, and honesty, apparently, is what humanity values most. I wonder sometimes what the galaxy would look like if we'd always operated this way, if we'd always demanded fairness and transparency instead of accepting corruption as standard procedure, if we'd called out injustice instead of filing it away as someone else's problem. The humans showed us that path, showed us it was possible, showed us what happens when you actually enforce the ideals everyone claims to believe in. It's terrifying, it's uncomfortable, it requires change and accountability, and facing uncomfortable truths. And stars help me, I think it might actually be better this way. So here we are, the galaxy after humanity, where diplomatic sessions are honest, where treaties mean something, where crimes don't get swept under bureaucratic rugs, where the threat of complete exposure keeps everyone in line. Ambassador Webb is probably preparing another presentation right now, another species that thought they could get away with something, another systematic dismantling of corruption and lies. I don't know who the target is, I don't want to know, I just want to make sure it's not us. That's the galaxy we live in now. The galaxy where humanity's diplomats are the most feared force in known space, where briefcases full of evidence are more dangerous than battleship fleets, where Marcus Webb's smile is the last thing corrupt empires see before their world ends. And you know what? The galaxy probably needed this. Needed someone to come in and shake things up. Needed someone willing to call out the lies we all pretended not to see. We just didn't expect it to be the new species. The Death Worlders. The ones we thought would be easy to manipulate. Shows what we know. The humans taught us a valuable lesson. Never mistake civility for weakness. Never assume politeness means pushover. Never underestimate someone who does their homework, and most importantly, never ever give humanity's diplomatic corps a reason to open their briefcases, because when they do, empires fall, and they fall fast. The galaxy feared humanity's diplomats, and they had every reason to. They still do.
And that, listeners, is why the most dangerous word in galactic politics are now these 6. Ambassador Webb would like a word. Sleep well, knowing humanity is watching, always documenting, always ready. So remember this, dear listeners, in this galaxy, there are warriors, traders, and politicians. In this galaxy, there are warriors, traders, and politicians. And then, there are human diplomats. Fear the briefcase. Always fear the briefcase.